What happens when one of Britain's most cherished actors sits down for what should be a standard interview, only to face relentless provocation from a host chasing headlines? Today, we're unpacking the moment Colin Firth, renowned for his calm composure and gentlemanly charm, hit his breaking point live on television. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone sideways. It became a masterclass in how not to treat your guests. And the explosive fallout. It'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about daytime TV. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and brace yourself. This is one interview you won't believe. The tension ignited with the very first question. Colin Firth arrived on The View that Tuesday morning, expecting to discuss his latest period drama, a film buzzing with awards potential. His press tour had been smooth, focused on craft, preparation, and the historical significance of the story. He settled into his chair with his trademark quiet confidence, adjusting his jacket and flashing that subtle familiar smile. But Joy Behar had other ideas. So, Colin, she began, leaning forward with a predatory gleam, before we talk about your little movie, I have to ask, don't you think it's a bit hypocritical how British actors come here, take roles from Americans, make millions, and then criticize our country? The studio went silent. This was not the expected opening question. Colin's polite smile faltered for just a moment before he regained control. I'm sorry, he said, measured but with a hint of edge. I don't quite follow the premise of your question. I've never criticized America as a whole, and I certainly don't see my work here as taking anything from anyone. Acting is collaborative. It transcends national borders. Joy waved him off dismissively. Oh, come on. You've been quoted criticizing American politics, culture. You take our money and then lecture us. Isn't that modern colonialism? The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Colin's jaw tightened slightly as his composure began to crack. You're conflating things, he said, accent sharpening with controlled frustration. Having opinions on policy isn't the same as attacking a culture. Suggesting my work is some form of cultural colonialism. That's not only inaccurate, it's insulting. Joy's voice rose, clearly enjoying the reaction. Insulting. Coming into someone's house, eating their food, then complaining about the cooking. You've made millions in Hollywood, Colin, and yet you lecture us when you return to London? I've been nothing but grateful, Colin replied, steel beneath calm. I've worked with talented American actors, directors, and crews. If you're going to accuse me of something, provide specific examples rather than generalizations. The camera zoomed in as Colin's composure showed cracks. His hands, usually relaxed, gripped the chair tightly. Oh, specifics? Joy leaned back, smirking. What about your Guardian interview, calling American political discourse primitive, or saying our healthcare system was morally bankrupt? Ring any bells? Colin's face flushed slightly, but his voice stayed firm. Context matters. Those comments addressed specific policies, not sweeping judgments on the American people. I stand by my observations. Having an opinion on healthcare policy is not an attack on America. Joy, growing shriller, pressed on. You can't help yourself. Even when called out, you double down. I stand by those observations, she mocked, mimicking his accent, escalating the tension to a moment no one in that studio would forget. How generous of you to stand by your insults. The studio fell completely silent. The audience watched, mesmerized as the confrontation spiraled out of control. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing they were anywhere else, but Joy Behar thrived, feeding off the chaos she had created. They weren't insults, Colin said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. They were observations made by someone who cares deeply about social justice and human welfare. If you call compassion an attack, that says more about you than it does about me. Joy's eyes sparked. She had found her opening. Compassion. She scoffed, laughter harsh and echoing through the studio. Is that what we're calling it now? Colin's hands released the arms of his chair, and for a heartbeat, the studio seemed to hold its breath. When he spoke again, his tone was colder, sharper, cutting through the air like a knife. Playing dress up, he said slowly, each word deliberate. Is that how you view the craft I've dedicated my entire life to? The craft that brings stories to life, stories that matter, that explore the human condition, that contribute something meaningful to the world. Joy sensed She may have gone too far, but doubled down anyway. Oh, spare me the noble artist routine, Colin. At the end of the day, you're paid to pretend to be other people. Let's not act like you're curing cancer here. And what exactly do you do? Colin's voice rose, his legendary restraint finally cracking. You sit behind this desk, every day tearing people down for entertainment. You invite guests under the pretense of conversation, only to ambush them with personal attacks and inflammatory accusations. Tell me, Joy, what exactly is your contribution to society? The other hosts froze, unsure how to intervene. The cameras rolled, capturing every second of this escalating drama. My contribution. Joy's composure was slipping. I hold people accountable. I ask the tough questions that no one else dares. I don't let celebrities waltz in and get free publicity. Challenging them. Colin laughed, but it was hollow, without humor. Is that what you call this? From where I'm sitting, it looks like coordinated character assassination. You've taken comments out of context, attributed false motives, and dismissed my profession as beneath your lofty standards of journalism. Don't lecture me about journalism. Joy snapped. I've been doing this longer than you've been making movies. Then act like it. Colin shot back, voice sharp enough to cut glass. Professional journalists ask questions to inform, to create understanding. They don't manufacture narratives and attack their guests for refusing to validate them. What you're doing isn't journalism, it's performance art. And frankly, not very good performance art. The audience was silent, captivated by the verbal showdown. Joy's face flushed red, her voice rising to match Colin's intensity. How dare you come on my show and tell me how to do my job? She shrieked. You're a guest here, Colin. A guest? Show some respect. Colin stood, towering over the desk, every inch commanding the room. You want to talk about respect? You invited me to discuss my work and instead spent 10 minutes attacking my character, my integrity, and my profession. From the moment I sat down, you've shown me no respect. So don't lecture me about respect now. One of the other hosts, clearly desperate, tried to intervene. Maybe we should take a commercial break. No. Joy cut him off sharply, eyes locked on Colin. We're not taking a break. Mr. FTH here seems to have something he wants to get off his chest. Please, Colin, continue. Tell us all how unfairly you've been treated. Colin stared at her, silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was icy, controlled, and deadly calm. You know what, Joy? You're right. I do have something to get off my chest. I've been doing interviews for over 20 years. In all that time, I've never encountered anyone so determined to manufacture conflict where none exists. You didn't invite me here for an interview. You invited me here to be your punching bag. That's ridiculous, Joy began, but her voice had lost conviction.
Is it?
Colin leaned forward, hands planted firmly on the desk. Did you watch my film before today? Did you actually check my quotes in context? Did you prepare a single question about the work I'm here to promote? Or did you just decide that attacking me would make better television than having a real conversation? Joy opened her mouth, but Colin wasn't done. Here's what I think happened, he continued, his voice gaining momentum. Before I even walked in, you decided you were going to create a moment. You would be the tough host who takes down the pretentious British actor. You built a narrative in your head about who I am and what I represent, and facts, fairness, reality. None of that mattered. You're being paranoid, Joy said, but she was visibly rattled. Am I? Colin laughed bitter, then explained to me why every single question you've asked was designed to put me on the defensive. Explain why you've mischaracterized every statement I've ever made about policy as an attack on American people. Explain why you've reduced my entire career to playing dress up while expecting me to sit here and smile politely as you tear me apart. The cameras captured every moment, the beads of sweat forming on Joy's forehead, her trembling hands shuffling papers, the other hosts frozen, wanting no part of this battle. I'm doing my job, Joy said weakly. No, Colin said firmly. You're hiding behind your job. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and creating a hostile environment for your own entertainment. The fact that you can't see that difference, that's the problem. Joy's composure shattered. You don't get to come on my show and attack me, Colin! This is my house! Then maybe you should learn to treat your guests with basic human decency. Colin shot back. What you've done here today isn't journalism. It isn't entertainment. It isn't professional. It's cruel, it's small, and frankly, it's beneath you. The words landed like punches. Joy's face contorted with fury. How dare you? She spat, voice trembling. How dare you sit there and psychoanalyze me, like you know anything about what I do or why I do it? You think, because you've played a few kings and prime ministers on screen, you're an expert on real life? Colin stood taller, rigid but controlled. I don't claim to be an expert on anything except my own experience, which now includes being systematically attacked by someone who had no intention of having an honest conversation from the moment I walked through that door. Attacked? Joy shrieked, her voice piercing enough to make several crew members flinch. I asked legitimate questions about your public statements, and you can't handle being challenged, so now you throw a tantrum like a spoiled child? Colin's composure, long held like a dam, finally snapped completely. Joy, you opened this interview by accusing me of cultural colonialism. Colin began, voice cold and measured. You suggested my entire career is theft from American actors. You mocked my accent, dismissed my profession, and then had the audacity to call it journalism. If that's your idea of legitimate questioning, I genuinely feel sorry for every guest who's ever sat in this chair. The other hosts exchanged panicked glances, realizing the situation was spiraling completely out of control. One tried to intervene. Maybe we should. No. Joy cut them off sharply, eyes blazing. I want to hear what Mr. High and Mighty here has to say. Please, Colin, continue telling us all how terrible I am at my job. I'm sure the audience is fascinated by your expert analysis. Colin stared at her for a long moment. Then, his voice dropped to ice.
You know what, Joy?
You're right. Let me tell the audience exactly what I think about how you do your job. Because they deserve to know what kind of person they're watching every day. The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. You've built a career on cruelty, Colin said, measured, deliberate. You've convinced yourself that attacking people is the same as holding them accountable. You hide behind the banner of journalism to justify behavior that would be unacceptable in any other profession. Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. Colin pressed on, voice rising with controlled intensity. You've forgotten that the people who come on this show are human beings, with feelings, with dignity, with the right to basic respect. Instead, you treat them like targets in some twisted game, seeing how much damage you can inflict before they fight back. You're out of line. Joy stammered, her voice weak and trembling. Am I? Colin's tone sharpened. Because from where I'm standing, everything I've said is demonstrably true. You've spent the last 15 minutes proving every single point I've made. You've shown this audience exactly who you are, and it's not someone who deserves the platform you've been given. The cameras captured it all, Joy's face cycling through embarrassment, rage, and something almost like fear. The other hosts were frozen, unsure how to handle a situation that had completely spun out of control. I've been doing this show for years, Joy said weakly, as if longevity could excuse her behavior. And that makes it worse, not better, Colin shot back. You've had years to learn how to treat people with dignity, and you've chosen not to. You've had years to understand the responsibility of having a platform like this, and you've squandered it on cheap shots and manufactured controversy. Joy visibly shook. Whether from anger or humiliation, it was impossible to tell. You don't know what you're talking about, she said. You don't know the pressures of live television, the demands of creating compelling content day after day. Compelling content? Colin let out a cold, humorless laugh. Is that what you call this? What you've created today isn't compelling. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing for you, embarrassing for this show, and embarrassing for everyone forced to watch it. One of the other hosts finally found her voice. Colin, maybe we should. Nope. Colin turned sharply, locking eyes with her. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this conversation needs to reach its natural conclusion. What's happening here isn't just one bad interview. This is about the culture of daytime television, the culture of manufactured outrage, the culture of treating guests like props in some elaborate performance, rather than as human beings. He turned back to Joy, who was now slumped in her chair, smaller than she had looked at the start of the interview, her bravado completely gone. "You want to know what real journalism looks like, Joy?" Colin asked, voice firm but calm. "Real journalism involves preparation, research, and good faith questions meant to elicit meaningful information. It means treating your subjects with respect, even when you disagree. Real journalism means being willing to have your assumptions challenged, not just using your platform to reinforce your own biases." Joy tried one last time to regain control. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this from some actor who thinks he's better than everyone else." "You're right," Colin replied simply. "You don't have to listen. But if you choose to walk away rather than engage with the legitimate criticisms I'm raising, you'll only prove every point I've made about your character and your professionalism." The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Joy looked around the studio, at her co-hosts, the crew, the cameras, realizing she was trapped. Walking away would look like an admission of guilt. Staying meant enduring Colin's systematic dismantling of her approach to hosting. "I'm not going anywhere," Joy said, her voice hollow. "Good," Colin said, settling back into his chair with a calm that was somehow more devastating than his earlier anger. "Then let's have the conversation you should have started with. Let's talk about my film, the historical period it explores, the themes it addresses. Let's have a substantive discussion your audience deserves, instead of the cheap theatrics you seem to prefer." Joy stared at him, clearly at a loss. The woman who had begun the interview with aggressive confidence was now confronted by a guest who had refused to be intimidated and had completely turned the tables. "It's about the complexity of moral choices in times of crisis," Colin explained, voice professional and steady. "It's about how ordinary people find themselves in extraordinary circumstances and must decide what they're willing to sacrifice for their principles. It's about the cost of integrity in a world that often rewards compromise." The irony was palpable. Joy's face went through a spectrum of colors as she realized how perfectly Colin's film mirrored what had just happened between them. "The character I play," Colin continued, "is a man who refuses to back down when confronted with institutional pressure to abandon his beliefs. He's willing to pay the personal cost of standing up for what he knows is right, even when it would be easier to go along with the system." Another loaded silence filled the studio. Joy opened her mouth several times but couldn't form a word. "It's a timely story," Colin added, looking directly at her. "About maintaining your integrity when under pressure. About understanding the difference between real courage and the illusion of toughness. About recognizing that having power comes with responsibility." Joy finally whispered, barely audible, "It sounds very interesting." "It is," Colin replied simply. "I hope people see it and draw their own conclusions about its relevance to today's world." The interview wound down with a few perfunctory questions about Colin's preparation and his thoughts on the historical period. But everyone in the studio knew the real drama had already played out. What they had witnessed was unprecedented in daytime television. As the show cut to commercial, Colin stood, straightened his jacket, and walked off the set without another word. Joy remained silent, the aftermath of the confrontation settling over the studio. What did you think of Colin Firth's response to Joy Behar's aggressive questioning? Was it too much or completely justified? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more unforgettable moments from live television.